All right. So guys, thanks for catching that there's a new Zoom link, and Gina is going to be transferring these to Vimeo. And hi, Marguerite. What a lovely outfit. And then we'll be able to preserve them longer. Okay. Actually, I think into perpetuity. So, all right. So I'm constantly inspired by the people I coach with. The coaching company is really incredible, and there's this Friday morning call every Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. California time, and we really basically. Hi, Carla England from Arizona. That looks like a fake background, but I'll bet it really actually looks like that right now out there. Um, so these calls are really just brainstorming and masterminding between a lot of a lot of the different coaches, and there's about 80 of us. And some of the things that are coming out of it are really, really incredible. And I'm going to cover a lot of it next week, because today I promised to talk about buyer urgency in a low inventory market. And next week, I'm going to go, we talked last week a little bit about listings. Now, next week, we're supposed to have a guest speaker. And then we will be revisiting the subject after that guest speaker on how to get more listings. But today I am going to cover buyer urgency and some things that we can do to better help get our buyers into contract. All right. So first and foremost, I want you to realize that there's so much power in brainstorming and masterminding, and there's a lot of power in what we call paying it forward. And that means that if you pick up something that's a benefit, like I see Sherry here from Tennessee, she and my wife were on the phone at like 7 a.m. California time. And I was listening, I couldn't listen to all of it because I was listening to something else. And I was hearing some great things about life and decisions and moving forward. All of those things are things that when you mastermind or brainstorm with other people, my dad used to say, two brains are always better than one. Then you take away with a little more. I call it my book club analogy, and I've shared it with you before. Is the analogy that you can read a book and get something out of it, but then when you ask somebody else in the book club what they got out of it, you listen and you go, gosh, what book did you read? Because I didn't get any of that out of that, right? It's the same idea when you hear other people's perspectives. And that's the beauty of being accepting, really, like being accepting and open and able to embrace things that you don't expect or things that are different than your own perspective. It's the same thing with buyers. It's the same thing with lead generating. You always say, well, how many people have told me as a coach, like thousands of people have said, oh, I don't like talking to people about that because I sound salesy. And I go, just call me the first time someone says to you on the phone, dude, you sound salesy, right? Because it's mostly us thinking someone's going to say that to us, not actually sounding salesy. So let's talk a little bit about it. Now, I know pretty much all of you, and I know that where you are, there is a lack of inventory. So it's tougher and tougher to get buyers in. One of the things that happens in California that I'm finding doesn't happen very much outside of California is the offer date idea. And I've talked to people from many states, and they're like, no, we can't do that here. The other agents will get mad. And I'm like, well, your job's to represent your job is to represent the seller, not the other agents, right? The other agents get mad. What's that?
Rick,
Yeah.
I have to say this. I just got a listing that I posted yesterday yesterday was the first showing, and I did put a deadline on it, offer date on it.
Oh,
And you're not
nice.
going to believe I have 35 showings as of today, tomorrow.
Wow, that's
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah, I
That,
did put that. I decided I'm going to do it like you said.
yeah. Well, and that's so good to hear. But the reason I said it is it gives more people an opportunity to make an offer. as opposed to what I was hearing today is I guess there's certain parts of the country where you can actually do an open house. I didn't know that, so I felt a little dumb about that because we cannot absolutely do any open houses in the state of California. But the lady was saying, but we had this all open house planned and then it sold before the open house. I'm like, well, in my opinion, that's your fault. Why not schedule the date for offers or the day we're going to look at offers? And even if you don't want to do an offer date, you can always say the seller will not be reviewing any offers that are given on this property until this Monday. That way you're not even saying that it's an offer deadline. You're just saying them when the seller is going to review the offers. And people will say, well, I'm giving you an offer, but it expires tomorrow. And you go, okay, well, then I guess you're not going to really have a chance at the house. You do get to make the rules up a little bit when you're the seller in this kind of market. But what's it mean for the buyer? Well, first and foremost, in California with my buyer's agents and the people on our team, is we are constantly looking for ways to make sure that our buyer is best prepared, right? Well, there's three major contingencies of any contract. It's loan, appraisal, and investigation or inspection, all right? So a lot of the people that are getting offers accepted have removed one, two, or all three of these contingencies to make their offer look stronger than the others. And then of course it has to be price. So this we talked even this morning, Cindy and I and other people on the team, about the fact that we really sometimes the only way to educate the client is to not let them, because we don't get the choice, but have them lose a transaction. In other words, they make an offer, they give it what they call their best shot, and then they lose the offer, meaning, oh, somebody offered more. Now, here's the number one thing I advise people. I advise buyers agents or agents representing a buyer, which is me, which is should be everybody on here, is that you have to remember that the number one question in their mind in a super hot market in the mind of the buyer is, what do you think I should offer? Right? How many of you have had that question asked of you? Or even if they didn't ask you, they intimated that they need you to tell them what to offer. Well, here's the thing, guys. You should, in a market that's this hot, in a market that has this much going, you should be looking more at what's pending as your comparable than what has closed. Because in a market that's moving as fast as this, all over the United States and Canada, not just California, the stuff that's sold is too old already. It's old. It's typically 60 days old, around there. It might be 45 days old, but typically 60. Okay, but a pending just went pending somewhere in the last 30 days, typically, or under contract. You might call it something different where you are. How many people are using in your MLSs use the term pending? You have a lot of, I know, okay, good. Yeah, most of California uses that term, but I think other people have other terms in different states. But here's the thing. If you look at what's pending and you look at the agent, sometimes some MLSs give you the name of the listing agent and the name of the agent representing the buyer when a contract's under contract. Not all MLSs do. Some just give you the listing agent and they tell you it's pending and you don't know who's representing the buyer. But I like to reach out to them, because what we look for in the confidential remarks is, was there an offer date? If there was an offer date and the property went pending on or around the offer date, then that property most likely had multiple offers and sold way over asking. So it's important that if you want to use that as a comparable, you might not even know what it sold for, but you can show it to your buyer and go, look, this had an offer date, went pending the day after the offer date. It probably went way over asking. Okay, so there's a lot you can do to build up what's actually the true comparable sale numbers, right? I have one that's closing today in Hayward, California. We listed it at 600 even, 595, I forget. We had 4 offers. It sold for 620 with 0 contingencies, meaning the buyer was going to buy it as is. It didn't matter whether they got their loan approved or not. They were still buying it, and it didn't matter if they got the appraisal. They were still buying it. Okay, that's what that offer was. Well, 2 more came on the market after we went pending, and I had calls from the listing agents. I had calls from agents representing buyers. Can you tell me? And I'm pretty generous with that information because I want people to be kind to me when I ask them those questions. So I said, yeah, sold for 620. And they go, well, why are you so okay telling me? I go, because there's no contingencies. The deal's not going to fall apart. Right. And I know there's been deals with no contingencies that fell apart, but for the most part, they don't. So, so I told them all that and they're like, oh, wow, that was 20 grand over asking in that tiny little townhome development. And that's actually pretty high over asking for that area. And I was super proud because we got the guy, my client, the most in the history of that development, the most for his floor plan ever sold. That's all. That's the goal, right? But here's the thing that really is intriguing me about this is that the buyers, Cindy is a great example of this. Cindy calls it a Rickism. And most of you don't know Cindy, but she's always on these calls. Her name's Cindy Cashin. And we've known each other over 40 years. And she is the lead buyer specialist on my team. And she's just an incredible lady. And Cindy and I talk about, she calls it a Rickism because when she says, back in her early days with me, when she'd say, well, what do I answer the buyer when he says, what should I offer? And I say I like to say to the buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this property is definitely going to go over asking. How much? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm going to give you an estimation of that based on what I see going on in the MLS, right? My friend Sumita, who's on the call, she just had that experience where she advised her clients, coached them, and begged them to go up higher, and they did go up higher, and then at the last minute they dropped it a bit. Turns out they wouldn't have gotten it anyway because it went way over that, right? So we're always learning lessons about the moods and the changes of the people, because what? Even buyers want to say, I got myself a good deal. Even maybe they didn't. That's what they want to say. Well, the good deal is not in the price. Guess where the good deal is, guys? And this is what you have to remind your clients. It's in the interest rate. All right. They should be excited as heck that they get to buy in a market where the interest rates are under 3 and not get so focused on necessarily what they paid for it. Because the fact is, if you can afford it, buy it, get it now while it's under the interest rate. Because even if it drops a whole bunch, but the interest rates go up a whole bunch, well, guess what? You lost out either way. So the nature of our business is education of our clients. That's the nature of our business. If your client is upset, it's because of one thing. You did not take the amount of time necessary to educate them on the entire process. So when people say I lost a client or they're upset, I go, let's go back to when you first met them, right? I know people, there's people on my own team that go, well, I want to get a buyer broker agreement signed. I go for it. That's great. I've never, ever, ever had success, nor have I desired to learn the techniques on how to get a buyer broker agreement signed. What I rather spend more time for me, don't go back to your brokers and tell them Rick told you not to do this. But for me, the thing that's been is spending so much time building up a great relationship with loyalty and sustenance, right? That people know, love, and trust you. Those 3 things. People say, should you use the word love there, Rick? Yes. I don't mean love you in the emotional sense, but I mean love that you're so passionate about your business and that you know about the numbers and that you're enthusiastic as heck about it. And you're never going to mention one negative word about the business or the market, ever. Maybe you wait till they leave if you want to say that stuff.
And Rick, don't forget to loop around to what your Rickism is.
I'm going to.
Okay. I got lost there. I was wait for it.
And Cindy's also a truth teller. She just puts it right out there. So yeah, so the Rickism is this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I want you to offer an amount such that if I call you back later and tell you that you lost it for $5,000, meaning if you had offered just 5,000 more, you would have gotten it. I want you to not be upset when you hear that. And they might say, what do you mean? I go, well, that means that you wouldn't have spent that $5,000 even if you knew you had to, right? You want them to offer an amount such that if they hear they lost it, they have absolutely no regret because they weren't going to go more anyway. Does that make sense to everybody? So, and I might say it a million different ways. I go, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you got to make the offer such that you're leaving it all on the table. You're leaving everything there. And then if you lose it, you're like, I gave it my all. I don't have any regrets. Let's move on to the next house. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter how many times I say that. I still have people, Cindy still has people, Sumita has people who say, I should have offered more. I freaking told you to offer more, right?
One other thing is they also need to understand that that 10 grand that they might have not offered, to go back to their lender and ask them what the difference is between offering this amount or 10 grand more. It's not very much. So I
Yeah.
use that as well.
Very good. And thank you, Cindy, because that's what I wanted to go to. I want to go back to the education process. You've all heard me say this before. I just tried counting again the other day, and I stopped counting at 68 family members that are in real estate and within a 50-mile radius of where I work. 68 family members, and there's more. I just stopped counting. So when people tell me, oh, I'm sorry, Rick, I bought a house with your cousin. I'm like, could you narrow it down? Like, which one of the 9,000 cousins of mine did you buy a house through? But the reason I say that is that the whole idea of the education process of working with a client has to go way back to your beginnings, right? And every market, okay, I'll give you an example. How many of you here, and show me your hand, were in the market between 2008 and 2011? Okay, not very many. Oh, there's more and more hands. Let me look at other pages. Keep your hands up, guys, please. I have to look at other pages at the same time. Okay, there's a few that were in the market. So guess what the market was? There was hundreds of homes on the market for each buyer. Okay, so we had to do the same thing. We were running around having a talk. Literally, KW Keller Williams had hired me and about five other major speakers to go around the country teaching a class called Buyer Urgency. Because in that case, when the buyer goes, oh, there's like 38 homes to pick from in the price range in the area I want, you're like, I'm not freaking showing you 38 homes, dude. But that you couldn't say that to them. You had to develop a script. You had to develop a script that basically was, and the script was, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, on a scale of 1 to 10, okay, I'm going to talk to you on a scale of 1 to 10, where today, if I show you the perfect home, it's perfect in price, it's perfect in condition, it's perfect in location, it's everything you're looking for on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you're not going to buy it for a year and 10 being you'd buy it today. Where do you actually fall before we go out and look at that house? And they go, I'm like a 7. Okay, great. Would you mind telling me what a 7 is for you? And they might say, well, a 7 means that if we really like the house, we're going to take a little video and we're going to email it to our parents. And then they'll look at it. And if they like it also, then they'll start arranging for us to get the down payment. I go, so what would you think in time? A month, maybe a month and a half. I go, okay, great. Now, what if I told you next that in a month to a month and a half, that house would be gone? It'd be sold. Now, remember, we're talking about the market then, not now. And they go, no, well, I don't know. There's so many on the market. And I go, well, see, that's what you have to know about the real estate market. There's 2 types of properties in the real estate market, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. They're called tier 1 properties and tier 2 properties. And let me tell you what that means. Tier 1 properties are going to sell in 3 weeks or less, no matter what the market's like. No matter what the market's like. And that could be based on condition, location, school district, or a number of different variety of things that could cause that home to sell. Tier 2 properties are properties that we don't know how long they'll take based on price, condition, and those same things, where they've ignored those. And they could be overpriced. There could be many different things that keep them on the market. See, up till now, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I've been showing you tier 1 properties. Now, here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want your heart broken, and I don't want to waste your time. I value you, your relationship, and I value your time probably more than you do. So there's no way in the world, knowing that you're going to take a month to maybe 2 months to make a decision, that I'm going to show you any more tier 1 properties. That way I won't be wasting your time. And that way I won't break your heart, because if you fall madly in love with a house and you take a month and a half to decide to make an offer on it, it's going to be gone. And then you're going to be upset. And I don't want to waste your time, nor do I want you heartbroken. So I'm only going to show you tier 2 properties. What do you think they say when I say that script there, that whole script? Anybody, just unmute yourself and tell me what you think they'd say.
I want tier 1 properties.
Yes. Exactly. Wait. I want to see tier one properties. I go, well, I want to show you tier one properties, but you got to really move this up from a 7 to maybe a 9. And it's okay if you don't. I don't want you to do anything that you feel uncomfortable, and nor is it my job to rush you into doing something you don't want. Okay. However, if you fall in love with a tier one property and you don't act quickly, it's gone. Really, Rick, even in this market? And then you know what you have to be able to do when they say that? You have to be able to show them proof. Pull up a bunch of properties that went pending in less than 3 weeks and show them this is an example of a tier one property. Now, we have a school district in Fremont called the Mission San Jose School District. Like, people from Fremont know about it because people come from all over surrounding cities to live there to be in that school district. And even in the worst market between 2008 and 2011, Mission San Jose schools, boom. If the house came on the market, it didn't matter what it looked like, didn't matter if it was overpriced, it sold within 3 weeks, right? So that's the idea, is understanding the market enough. Now let's look at that and relate it to this market, okay? This is a market where things go quickly. However, every time someone has asked me for a price range, and I actually shared this with our team once on one of our daily huddles, I looked it up and I found 3 properties that were on the market for over 90 days, 3 properties. Okay, then I looked again, and then I made some calls, and 2 of them were still on the market, and it was another one had sold a long time ago and nobody bothered to market pending or sold. So still 2 properties in that one little city. What does that tell you? That there's always answers out there, and that we are rushing around and not paying attention to what's right in front of us. We can run expired listings. This is something that I learned on the call this morning, that up to 30% of our databases, all of us here, our databases are not aware of what's going on in the market. It's like being aware of the names of attorneys when you don't need one. You get that? It's the same exact thing. Being aware of the names of attorney when you don't. If you're not thinking about buying or selling, then what's going on in the buying and selling market is not privy to you, unless you're one of those newsmongers and you're reading or listening all the time. But there's a lot of people who don't, or they listen to one kind of news and not the other, right? Like, my brother wouldn't know what's going on in the real estate market, but ask him anything about politics, he'd know everything going on in the political arena. So it's our job, seriously, to educate our clients about the process, about the business, about what's going on in that particular market and how you can help them. One of the questions, because I list both luxury properties way up there in price and regular properties that are in the market where things are going like nuts, the luxury market in the Bay Area is not at the pace that's going on with the rest of the homes. Properties in San Francisco have gone down in value. Rents in San Francisco have gone down. I have a friend, the people whose house I'm in, they have 2 kids that just moved to Manhattan. In Manhattan, they're paying $2,300 a month rent, right? Because people are escaping the big cities. So we need to know our market really well. We can't just randomly say, oh, the entire market's on crazy. It's like when people call me and say, Rick, how's the market in California? I'm like, are you kidding me right now? This is one of the largest geographical states in the nation, and the market is different in every little pocket. And for the most, the areas that were hit the hardest by short sales and foreclosures throughout the state, the hardest are the ones doing the best right now. Like, their percentage of appreciation is higher than any other cities in the state of California. So like not far from Marguerite, probably Elk Grove, Fair Oaks, all these areas, but certainly Stockton, Modesto, Tracy, Patterson, Merced, Turlock, areas around Fresno, they're all going nuts, right? They can't just, people want to get the way away from these high dollar per square foot areas, where we have areas across the Bay where it's not unusual to pay $1,500 a square foot. Okay. You want something to freak you out, $1,500 a square foot. So you're paying 1.5 million for 1,100 or 1,200 square feet. So, okay, I want to stop right there.
Detroit to that list.
What's that, Lucky?
You can include Detroit to that list.
Ah, do they have that kind of thing going?
Way over.
Wow. Wow. I did not know that about Detroit.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Nice. All right. Let me stop and read the chat. Say the market shift in 2020 in San Francisco rent started to tick up as the condo value. Nice. Okay. Thanks, Dennis. That's great. They're first in the climb, first in, first out. Crazy in our area, sold REO for BFA. Regina, most of them don't have the last name of Jihad. They have other last names that are Middle Eastern. So that's probably why you haven't heard of any bunch of jihads that are in the marketplace. Now, so as we look at this, what are we going to do differently now? What will we do differently? Well, first and foremost, please take time to have a buyer consultation. What's a buyer consultation? Please. One of the girls on my team named Michelle isn't on the call today, but we just did one the other night together. And I always try to do them. We like to do them together, like not just me, but other people on the team. So they're either learning. All right. And I have a lot of business partners on my team that work with me. So, so we taught, the buyer reached out to me, longtime friend of mine, Marguerite. This is really weird. She used to be the admin for the Keller Williams in Elk Grove, in Fair Oaks, California. And she remembered me coming there to teach a class, and now she moved to the Bay Area, and she said, oh my gosh, we got to get Rick to sell us a house. So I brought my business partner on with me, and we chatted with them, and they picked some houses out to talk about on our first initial Zoom buyer consultation. So we went over everything. What do you do in a buyer consultation? First and foremost, look, number one, you build rapport. Number one thing is you build rapport. That's asking personal questions and waiting for an answer. Listening, being interested, not interesting. Okay? How are you? Nice to meet you. Where do you live? Where are you from? How'd you meet? Who's the family? All of these things. Stay appropriate in the moment, meaning keep the conversation moving in the direction it's intended to go. You didn't come to this Zoom to know everything about them, just to know enough to be the best buyer's agent they can possibly be. Now, remember, buyer consultations for you, me and you, the agent, should involve more questions than answers, right? More questions than statements. And that is things like, so of all the times you could have decided to buy a home, what was the impetus for you deciding to buy a home now? To me, that's a great question. I didn't think of it. Somebody else taught me that many, many years ago. Like I'm talking about the 80s. Of all the times you could have decided to buy a home, why is now the time you decided? Now, this is not just a curiosity question. This is a rapport building question, because you're going to hear more than you suspect. Oh, well, I've heard people say, well, 2 years ago we tried to buy, we got priced out of the market because every offer we make got bid up, and we sold, and we ended up going way over what we could afford. And what do you want to say in your mind? Is that what happened last time? Guess what's going to happen this time, dude? But you don't want to say that, right? But at least you know what happened. And then I go, okay, well, what happened over the last couple of years? And they might say, oh, well, we've saved up a lot more money, and we both got promotions in our job, and it's super cool, and we're really excited. Good. Right? This couple this is going to be their first home purchase that I was on the buyer consultation, and they're in their late 40s, early 50s, first home purchase, right? A little different than the norm. We had our lender on the phone the other day on our team call, and she told us that 33 years old was going to be the number one age group of first-time home buyers, and that they would make up first-time home buyers would make up between 50 and 58% of our sales. I'm encouraged about that, because I have all kinds of ages on our team, and sure, we're going to attract a lot of 33-year-olds, but we're going to we just attracted a 50-year-old first-time buyer. So it's important that we be all things to everybody. And that's why when we talked about the DISC, when we talk about understanding the behavioral style of people, you've got to learn to understand behavioral styles such that when someone's speaking, you can figure out what their behavioral style is. And then you can start to speak back to them in their language. And what I mean by that is their body language, their cadence, all of those different things. So these are very, very important factors. The more you know about somebody personally, the better you can take care of them. Now, here's another great question. Have you considered what's most important to you about the real estate agent that will help you purchase the home of your dreams? Have you considered what's most important to you about the real estate agent that will help you purchase the home of your dreams? Now, there's lots of ways to ask that. One of the other ways is I do this. And remember, if you remember from last week when we were talking about listings, when I'm sitting down with the client, when we're doing the rapport building just before we do the presentation, have you ever had an experience with a real estate agent in the past? Oh yeah, when we bought this home 30 years ago. Great. Well, let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you never want to see that realtor again, and 10 being you wish you knew where he was right now, what would you rate that last experience you had with a real estate agent, right? These are great questions. Anytime you ask a 1 to 10, guys, a 1 to 10 question, and by the way, 1 to 10 questions are very popular in the coaching arena, any kind of arena, sales, where you're trying to dig things out of people. The 1 to 10 questions play a big role. But here's the most important question that comes right after that is this: what does blank mean to you? So whatever the blank is, the number they pick between 1 to 10, right? You cannot have any emotional attachment to what number they pick. On a scale of 1 to 10, what was your experience like with that realtor? And they say it was a 6. You don't care what their answer was, but your next question is, great, tell me, what does a 6 mean to you? And they might look at you for a minute. You go, for instance, what would they have needed to do differently to be a 10? That's where your question is. What would you have needed to do differently to be a 10? Now, what are you doing? You darn well better be making notes about everything that other realtor didn't do to be a 10. Because what are you going to do? You're going to do what that realtor didn't do, right? You guys, I don't know how many of you were on the phone on the call last week, but I had some people text me and they thought I was kidding about the appointment that I went to when I said, what are you most looking for in a realtor? And they said, do you remember what I said last week? That they said, oh, we're going to definitely hire a female realtor. And I had people text me going, was that a true story? I go, it's absolutely a true story. Just as true as going to a listing appointment and having the lady answer the door with nothing on. That's also true. Not that that matters, but I'm saying I've had about everything you can imagine happen to me in my 41 years of selling homes. It was a very interesting experience too, because she said, I'm in the middle of getting dressed. I'm going to run back and get something on. You come in and wait in the kitchen. That's an absolutely true story. And I don't think I've ever told anybody that till just now. So, but the whole thing is that this is, we should be having fun, but we also have to take this business seriously because people's lives are dependent on it. One of my favorite people in the world is on here. Her name's Patrice Payne. And we were working with a buyer together not too long ago. I think it was probably about 5 months ago or so, maybe 4 months. And we had one of those, we had made an offer for almost $250,000 over asking on a property. And we couldn't get the seller's agent to commit to a time when they were going to do the offers. And she kept saying, my seller's kind of, antsy and worried. Well, they went ahead of telling everybody and accepted an offer that was actually less than ours. And we freaked out. We were like, ask Patrice. I was so upset. I felt so bad because I had the responsibility to try to get their offer in, and they could have won it, and they were madly in love with this house. And when we told them they lost it, I mean, they were literally heartbroken. And we probably were more truthful than we needed to be, but we told them they lost it to somebody who offered less than them. And then they were like, oh, and we literally, Patrice and I barely heard from them for 2 weeks. And we would be checking in with them because they were getting a drip. And I think it was about 2 weeks later, she called us and she goes, oh my gosh, this is, I swear to God, what she said. I'm so glad we didn't get that last one. We want this one more than anything. I was so relieved, right? And I said to her, remember what I told you, anyone you lose is just a sign that there's something better coming along. And so we didn't take any chances. We made the offer for $300,000 over asking. They got it. Apparently they beat out the other one by only $25,000. And I know for some of your areas, 25 grand's a lot, but in that area, 25 grand is not a lot. So anyway, long story short, you're going to have these victories and these losses, but you're holding something very valuable in your possession. And that is the trust, people who have decided that they can trust you, that you'll protect them and you'll take good care of them. And remember, some of your buyers are also some of your sellers, especially in all over the United States, much more than here because there's so many people leaving California for good. But in the rest of the United States, people like where they live and they're selling to either buy up or buy down, right? To buy, I'm getting out of my 2-story and buying a 1-story or whatever. So it's very important that you be very, very cognizant of your responsibilities on both ends, right? Protecting your seller. I tell agents, I tell people all the time, I want you to like me. I'm like the flight attendant on an airlines. I want to make sure that I get you what you want. I want to make sure I'm there to serve you well. But at the end of the day, I'm there for your safety, protect you. That's what they say about flight attendants, right? They're there to serve you, but their main thing is your personal safety. And that's what I tell my clients. And when they get that, they get the analogy that, yeah, they should like me, but they should also figure out if I'm the guy that's going to protect them, negotiate for them well, protect their interests, and take really good care of the most valuable asset they may ever have. So as you look at buyer urgency in a market, the most important question you can ask is, I am ready, Mr. and Miss Buyer, to make sure that we go out and find you exactly what you want. I need for you to be brutally honest with me about your timing. And the reason I say that, and I'm going to say this with all due respect, this is not a market for wimps. It's a scary thing to go out there and try to buy a house in multiple offers when there's 5 to 15 buyers for every home that comes on the market. 5 to 15. So, Mr. Buyer, are you guys pretty ready to jump in this? Oh yeah, great. Okay, then great. Let's talk about the process from start to finish. And by that, I mean from today to the day I'm handing you the keys and you're walking into your home. Can we talk a little bit about that? And they'll go, yeah. And I'll go, great. You tell me what you know up to now about the entire process. Well, Rick, we did buy a home before. Okay, great. Do you remember what year that was? And they'll go, yeah, why is that important? I'll say, because I've been in the market for almost 41 years. And I know what the markets were like each year I was in the business, and I actually remember. So I'm just wondering what the market was like the last time you bought a home. And they tell me, right, and I'll go, great. This market's a little different, but the process is about the same, that you get pre-approved. You typically will get approved for an amount more than you want to buy because you may decide that your comfort is at a lower payment. It's important for us to know what's the most you can qualify for and what's the comfort area that you really want to buy in. Now, I'd love to be able to help you with that, but I'm not a lender. So it's very important that we work together as a team. So I want you to know that, and I want you to learn that we're going to do this. Now, here's something else, guys, that I've done. In 1994, I can remember the year and I can remember the phone call. Hey, Tom, just checking in on you. When are we going to get to go out and look at homes some more? Oh, Rick, I already bought a home. What? We just went out looking a couple weeks ago. He said, yeah, well, I didn't like the lender you referred me. And I just assumed if I didn't use that lender, I couldn't use you. You assumed what, you stupid? No, I didn't say that. But isn't that what you think at a moment? Like, where'd you get that idea? But it's my responsibility. I didn't educate the client. So from 1994, my 14th year in the business, guess what I say when I refer somebody a lender? Now remember, I know lots of lenders. The one I picked to introduce to you is because I feel like based on what you need, they will be the best. But I want to remind you, if they ever say anything that upsets you or you don't like, it's okay. I got other lenders. Just come back right to me and I'll take good care of you. That script got added because of that call in 1994. You get that? So you got to learn to add those things, right? When I talk to a buyer, for instance, now, because in 1992, I lost a buyer, a good one. It was 250,000, and I won't forget it because back then 250 was like a ton of money. And they bought from a new developer because what? I hadn't told them, don't even go into a new development without taking me with you because they won't let me represent you. And you need my representation. You need somebody on your side. Those people in there, they represent the builder and the seller, not you, right? And I say that every time now. So I get calls. Rick, we're thinking about going into new development. I remember you told us not to go in without you. When can we go? Right? What's the rule? Isn't it the rule for all of you? If you don't visit with them on the first visit, you don't get the commission. Ugh, right? So all of those things have to be incorporated into your buyer consultation. I don't want to tell you what your buyer consultation needs to be, but it has to have rapport building. It has to have a ton of questions. It has to have a process explanation where you go through the process and how things will happen, right? Now, we've talked about buyers are liars. They're really not liars. So when someone says, Rick, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for, when I get their price, I like to show them a cross section. Definitely no condos or townhomes, Rick. You don't know how many times I've heard that in our area and end up selling somebody a townhome, because in our area, townhome has a little backyard and it might have a garage. It's just like a mini home, right? So we'll show them a townhome. We'll go, this is a townhome? Oh, I thought townhomes were more like condos, right? You know, so it's not that buyers are liars. Buyers don't know what they don't know. And it's important for us to stay neutral and keep our damn emotions out of it. Their emotions matter, yours don't. Right? You find somebody to vent your emotions about your buyers to. I have a bunch of people like that. Cindy can vent to me. I can vent to her or Tom or anybody else.
Me too.
Yes, you too, Sumita. That's right.
I want to talk to you after the call if you have 5 minutes.
All right. So that's the whole thing about the, you know, understanding a buyer consultation at a deep level. And if you're working with other agents, then collaborate. Right? Like I know, for instance, that Amanda and Lucky are friends in Michigan. They work for a company that I'm very close to, that I've spoken for. If you guys have to get a group of people and say, hey, let's all collaborate and decide what's a buyer consultation look like. Okay. And you know what? If I were any more organized, I'd probably have something written down, scripts or whatever. And I've got to check and see what Workman Success has, because they probably have something that looks similar to a buyer consultation. But you've got to get one that's comfortable for you. Now, here's the last thing. What's the most important thing in anything we do in real estate? I'm not going to make you guess the answer. It's confidence. The number one answer is confidence. And sometimes we don't. And you might think that because I'm talking to you today and I'm very comfortable with what I'm talking about, that I have confidence. Yeah, but sometimes I have to fake confidence. So what I draw from is, where in my life do I have a ton of confidence? All right. I talked to Sumita about this recently. I said, where do you have a ton of confidence? I said, think about how you are as a mom to your son, right? Like, she's an amazing single mom. I said, think about that. When your son back talks you, or what do you do? What are you doing back talking? You sit your butt down right there and whatever you do, but as a mom, she has a ton of confidence, right? I have a friend of mine that works near our team with the same company as me, and she had 25 years as a hairstylist and a beautician, right? And I said, okay, if somebody ever argued with you about the color that they were going to put in their hair and why would you put it, Marguerite, that's such a great statement. Sexiest thing on the planet is confidence. I'd say, okay, when you're talking to somebody in real estate, I want you to borrow from the confidence you used to have when you were doing hair. Okay, where do you have confidence in your life? Wherever that is, when you're going into something in real estate where you have less confidence, borrow it. But what about this? If the client has decided to work with you, don't they have the ultimate confidence in you? Yes or no? Right? If the buyer has chosen to work with you, they have the ultimate confidence in you. Therefore, you better step up and show them that confidence is very well seated. It's very well placed. Okay, so you've got to be the person. What I used to tell myself when I was younger, I remember the first time in the early 90s when somebody asked me to sell them a building. Right? I'm like, I'm not a commercial agent, but I'm not saying no. That's a pretty big transaction. I said, you're darn right. There isn't anything I can't help you with. And if I don't know, I'll get the answer. That's what I said. I was shaking, but I said it, right? And then I went out to research, and then that caused, up to my 13th year in the industry, that was the largest sale I'd ever had, which was $550,000. Huge for me, right? Huge. My average sale price back then was like 180. So that's a lot in terms of you being confident that even if you say yes and you're not sure, that you're confident you can go out and find the right answers and take excellent care of your clients. You don't want to let them down, right? Okay, so keep in mind, a buyer consultation is vital. And to me, it's more important than a buyer broker agreement, because a buyer broker agreement gets somebody signing something that a lot of times they don't even truly understand, even if you've explained it. But a buyer consultation, you got somebody sitting down. When I used to do buyer consultations in my office years ago, I had a packet for them when they sat down, and it had maps and everything from the area. And then I'd have a pad of paper with a pen so they could take notes while we talked about the process. Okay. So it's very important that they learn that. It's very important that you learn Rickisms, or call them whatever you want. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we are most likely not going to get a counter offer. So whatever we give them will probably be our last shot. Okay. And you might say, look, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we represented 56 buyers last year, and we got 3 counter offers, 3 out of 56, because for the most part, somebody's going to step up with the most amazing offer. And if you really want this, I want it to be you. They won't even look at the rest. They'll just accept yours and move on. Like, you got to say that with confidence, and you got to say it with sincerity and authenticity, and let them know that's how you're winning the market. All right. California just passed some stupid real estate rule where you have to be, you can't say certain things in the letter from the buyer to the seller. I told you guys about this before. I'm not really happy about it. Some of the agents are putting in their confidential remarks, please do not send a letter from the buyers to the seller with your packet.
That's the same here in Michigan as well.
Is it? Yeah, you know, we're still doing that. You know, who knows? Somebody can rip it up, or maybe it'll make a difference. But
Yeah.
you know, if they rip it up, it doesn't hurt anything. But if it makes a difference, it helps. So
Rick, our broker said, you know, if you have your buyer instead say everything they love about the house and not talk about themselves, they can do that.
yes,
And as a listing agent, we can accept that, but it has to be about the house.
right. They don't want pictures, or my family is this, or I want to raise my kids there, and all this stuff that they said may be implied biases. So,
Yeah, like somebody
yeah.
in a wheelchair, or somebody, you know, multiracial, or somebody, you know, just all kinds of things. And,
Yeah.
you know, just trying to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's what I'm telling my clients. If you write one, you know, tell them, oh, you know, we can picture ourselves in that family room, you know, or something like that. So something about the house. But that's not the main point here, is not that so much as it is that that we have an opportunity when we're taking care of buyers to set ourselves completely apart. Because I have gotten more referrals from buyers in my 41 years than I've ever gotten from sellers. Because why? They so appreciate the hard work that you went through, right? Now, one of the other things before I go, I want to remind you, I'm not going to tell you what to do when somebody asks for a part of your commission, because I would be lying if I said I never said yes to that, right? I have, but I don't like the practice. I'm not a big fan of it. That's a personal opinion. I know that it gets asked a lot of places. However, I have accentuated in my buyer consultations that Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you get all my services for free. The seller has to pay me to sell you their home. Okay. And that's why I want you to know that I take this very seriously, because even if you don't have to pay me for all of my hours and effort, I want you to know they're all there. That behind the scenes, I'm doing everything I can to find you exactly what you're looking for. And there was something that I wanted to talk about a little earlier. We used to have a guy in our office when I ran a Century 21. Now I'm talking about, I ran this from 1993 to 2001. And most of this, of what happened that I'm about to tell you about, happened between 97 and 99. This guy, he was Eastern European, and his wife was also. They were born and raised there, and they moved to the United States in their young adulthood, and were in the United States for a lot, but also spoke English with a very thick accent. And they were the most committed, hardworking couple I'd ever met. John and Camilla Liebman, right? There's no reason in the world for me to continue to remember their name other than they were a couple like I'd never met before. They were not all that social, right? You would have thought you were talking to a general in the Army when you talked to him. All right. He was always in a white shirt. And there was a market at time in Mission San Jose, California, where he worked, where there was hardly anything on the market. If you've heard me say this story before, then it's okay. But if you haven't, it's pretty powerful. So he would put his wife in the driver's seat, and he would sit in the passenger seat, and he would put his husband and wife buyer, or whoever buyer, in the back seat of the car. and they would go into all of these very pricey neighborhoods in Mission San Jose, and they would stay in the car with the window down as long as it wasn't raining, and he would walk up to the door and knock on the door. And he again, I mean, he sounded like a commandant in the Navy, right? He'd go, "Hi, my name's John Liebman. I'm not here," he'd go like this, "I'm not here to ask you to sell your home or list your home. I am saying, however," and then he'd point to the car. He said, "In the back seat of that car are Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. My wife's driving the car. If you've even thought of selling your home, my buyers are looking in this neighborhood and there's nothing on the market. If you have an interest, let me show the home to my buyers. If they like it, we'll write an offer. And if they don't, we won't bother you." "No, thanks. I'm not thinking of selling my home." Great. He would literally walk to the next door and she just moved the car up. All right. In 1998, he sold 13 homes that way. 13. That wasn't all he sold, but he sold 13 from that practice. Okay. And guess what he did? He averaged on those sales. Now remember, back then, the average commission on a buyer's side back in the 90s was still 3%. It's 2.5 now, but it was 3. But he was averaging 4.2% on every sale, because some of them he'd get for 6 because he'd convinced them that he was doing both sides. And some of them he'd only get 3, and some of them he'd get 4 or 4.5. But he was averaging a higher commission on those 13 deals. But guess what? The loyalty of his buyers was so strong that they would actually go tell people at work. Do you know what he does? Do you know what he does? He walks while his wife drives the car, and he knocks on doors and he asks people that our homes aren't for sale. They go, I was freaking out that he was asking. And the first time he told us to get out of the car to go in and look at the house, we were like, "Really? It's not for sale?" And they go, no, the guy wants to sell it. Come on in. Like, he was breaking all, not records so much, but all boundaries that had ever been set before. He was just saying, whatever, I got to do whatever I can to get my clients a house. Yeah, thank you, Regina. That's a better way, breaking the norms. So think about that, like what you're not doing that you could be doing, right? I have people tell me all the time, "I don't want to door knock anymore because, you know, people are afraid if I'm not wearing my mask, or I am wearing my mask." I go, "What about door dropping?" Those are all the things that can be done. So there's a lot. I mean, this is a really big subject, a lot more than an hour. But all I'm hoping is that you took away something that you'll go use immediately and make a difference in the business, period. That's it. I mean, you've got to really take control of this. And if you're not educating your buyers up front, you're doing them a disservice. Up front, before you ever go look at a house, before you do everything, get the honesty down, write it down. And then if you go a long time and haven't gotten them to write an offer, then I say, I have a revisit. "Mr. Miss Buyer, let's sit down. You can do it by Zoom. I think I owe you an apology." And they'll go, "Sure. Okay." So you get on Zoom. I want to apologize. I've got a list of the stuff we talked about when we first met. And I'm thinking maybe I didn't get it right because we haven't found anything that you really want to write an offer on yet. It's always good to revisit that, guys. Take the blame. Say, "I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Maybe I misunderstood you. Please, let's go back over it because I want to make sure I'm doing it." Some of the other things you can do, and I know I'm stuffing a lot in here at the end, is this. Is this a home you'd buy? No, we told you inside we didn't like it. Right? Great. Just really quickly, what would have had to been different about this house for you to have bought it? And if you're asking more questions like that when they come out of a house, you're going to get an idea, right? You're going to get an idea of where you're missing, you know, or what they need more of or less of, right? So, okay. We got 1.5 minutes for any quick questions.
Rick, I just want to say thank you for last week. Israel was very, very, very good also.
Lucky your
Not as
letter to
good
me
as
was
you are.
heartwarming.
But
Yeah.
you,
How many people got to see that? Because I've been hearing really great things about it. Yeah, it's good. Good. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because it was really, I got a lot of powerful comments, but also Hunter, the guy who put it on, is a personal friend of mine. And he said there was overwhelming response from the people that were on there. I guess there were several hundred people that got on.
Mhm. Yes.
What was it, Rick?
Who is that? Is that Tommy?
Mr.
Tom
Thank You.
Costello? Sorry. I missed
Tom
it.
Costello.
Oh, okay. I have a couple of Toms on here. Tom, it was and I put the recording in the email. Did you guys get that? It's in here.
Yes.
The email about today's call, we put a recording. It was an interview with an author who had a challenge about writing handwritten notes and how it completely changed his life. So, and it was an interview between a friend of mine who's a mortgage broker and a coach and this author. And he invited me to invite everybody from our call on. So if you got the email for today, Tom, somewhere in there is the recording link of that call. So,
He was awesome. When
Cool, thank you.
Amanda and I are working on it every day now, so 5 thank you notes every day.
yeah.
So,
And Sherry, yes, go ahead. You don't need to ask. Please feel free, unmute yourself and share your thought.
I just wanted to really quickly, we talked about doing the 1 through 10 question. And I actually prep my buyers when I get in the car. I said, I'm going to ask you when we get done with each house to give me a livability rating of 1 through 10. And then we're only going to consider 8 through 10 as being options that you're going to write an offer on, that you are going to write an offer on when we are done. And then as we walk through the house, I'll ask them about the kitchen. So if you had to rate this kitchen, is it a 1? Is it a 10? Why isn't it? What is it? And then we go through the house, and it becomes less as we go through the process. But as we go through each house, that's what I ask. And then when we're walking out, it's like, so what's this house? Well, it's a 9. Well, we better be heading back to the office and writing on it now so it doesn't get away from you. So you can use that 1 through
Nice.
10 to narrow in and get them focused. And you're asking them to buy every time you ask that question without it seeming too pushy.
Nice. I love that. Love that. Thank you, Sherry Mason. Sherry's formerly from Northern California. Now she's in Tennessee. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. This is great. I love the collaboration today, and I hope that you all have a wonderful week. We do have a guest speaker next week. She's amazing. I hope you'll all enjoy her. I'll be here, of course. And then the following week, we're going to get back to the listing subject again. Okay. We got to get, it's the biggest issue in a low inventory market. So we're going to have another whole call about that. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Rick, I need an agent for Las Vegas.
Oh, okay, great. I'll
Thank you.
text you one. Look.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick, so much. So much information. Thank you so much.
Bye, thank you. Bye.